Is everybody full and content after lunch now? Yeah! All right. And are you stoked about material? Yeah! So, welcome to Everything Material All at Once. I'm Mike. I'm also known as Material Mike and Ryd Mike on Twitter. I'm the author of Flex Color Scheme and Teams Playground. And with me I have...
I am Taha. I'm a Flutter contributor at Good Magic.
And if Simon is known as the Flutter Whisper, Taha is the Flutter Fixer.
There is nobody more passionate about color scheme than Mike.
So, Everything Material agenda, we have a really packed one, and it's going to be quite dense. And since it is so action-packed, we are not going to be able to go into detail about everything, but you will find references to everything where you can dig deeper and study it and repos and links. So this is going to be a very everything all at once in that sense. And to kick it off, we have on the topic color scheme, one of my favorite topics, and I know how everybody loves the complex color scheme, and it has gone completely wild in the latest release, and we are going to talk about it.
There is a new fancy colors carousel in material design. It has a really cool parallax effect. We're going to be talking about a sneak preview of this new widget.
A recent change is widget state. It's not really a new thing. It's just that all the material state APIs migrated into widget state and the old ones have been deprecated. We're going to look a little bit about that.
And we're going to use this widget state in a button builder. I'm going to talk about these fancy buttons. These are all text buttons, even though some of them don't look like text buttons. And with button builders, you can transform your buttons into completely non-button buttons. So we'll go in the details later. And I'm also going to talk about a whole bunch of improvements in the material library. We have some small improvements like icon alignment to a updated widget, expanded inset, which allow you to have a really long segmented button. And I'm also going to talk about constraints in chip, like when you're creating a very small layout or like you have limited space, you can reduce the constraints on the leading and trailing on the chips. And then I'm going to talk about chip, already done that, app bar shape customization. It's not really a new feature, but I'm just going to talk about like how you can customize app bar without having to create an entirely custom app bar. So you will see a code snippet there and a cool demo with a link at the bottom.
All right. Since I'm the teaming guy, what else I'm going to talk about then? Teaming. And I'm going to tame the complex color scheme, and we're going to look at adaptive teaming, meaning that we're going to have a different looking end result on our widget depending on if we're on iOS or Android. So that is kind of a cool feature that people usually overlook.
And then I'm going to talk about material suggested animation, easings, and duration. I'm going to have some visual elements where you can see these easings are just animation curves. They are provided by the material team to create expressive animations in some of the widget. And then if you all know text style, you can customize your text in a widget using text style. You can provide color, font size, font weight. We have a new class called animation style, which does the similar thing. You can customize animation duration, animation curve, reverse animation duration, and reverse animation curve. So you will find this new class in some of the widgets. So I'm going to give a couple of examples using this class.
All right. We have a lot of things to cover, so let's dive right into new color scheme. It's not really new, but what happened with Flutter 3.22 makes it feel like new, because if we go back and look at the good old days when everybody was happy and we had only 12 easy colors to define in Material 2, in light and dark, it was 24 in total. That was easy, you know, I can do that when I make my theme for my app. Then at some point, Material 3 arrived, and suddenly we had 30 colors, and also for the dark theme. So now 60 colors to define to make a nice color scheme for a material application. And that was already a bit much, but then came Flutter 3.22. And now we have 46 in light and dark, plus 3 that are deprecated. So 92 that you actively have to define and do. And this is like, what's going on? Why all these changes? And the reason is quite simple. It's just to bring Flutter up to speed with the latest material spec that has actually been defined and modified already over a year ago. So we are a little bit late in Flutter in adopting this change. But why was the spec changed? Well, because a lot of developers and designers were not too happy about this elevation tinted surfaces where colors change when you add elevation to it. That was complicated to deal with when you want to make a design, you want to fix the colors so that you know what they will be. And we have that now. We have a lot of new surface color roles, and they get new colors. We also have some other colors called fixed colors that exist for primary, secondary, and tertiary. The idea with these are that they remain the same in light and dark mode. So if I go back here, you can see the middle row there when I'm switching between the light and dark scheme. Those colors are not changing. They remain the same in the light and dark theme. So those can be used when you want to do things like that. Another, for me, a kind of exciting new thing in Flutter 3.22.2 hotfix, because it didn't arrive in the 0 version. So we got the dynamic scheme. It was supposed to arrive in the 3.22 when it arrived, but it was a snafu that it didn't. So with this, we can control how the seed generation algorithm works a little bit. We have a few options. Tonal spot is the default one, the one we are kind of used to. This is a little bit different than the previous default in 3.19 and everything before that. That made some people upset. We got a new one called Fidelity, which has more pop and colors, but tertiary looks totally different when you do this scheming. This is all using the same seed color, by the way. And we have Vibrant, where primaries are very colorful, and Content, which is a nice kind of balanced one that are used to make content. And then we have Neutral, a total monochrome one. Crazy, why would you want a monochrome scheme? Well, this is quite a nice starting point if you want to just pop in your colors yourself on the primaries. You can make this and you override those colors. Kind of handy to use for that kind of thing. And then we got 3 ones that I don't know what they do, Expressive, Rainbow, and Fruit Salad. I don't know why they are there. They are just nuts, but okay, we got them. A new thing that is not in Flutter stable, but it's in master, so it's landing soon, and it exists in the Material Tree Guide, is contrast level, where we by default had the standard one that you see, and then you have a medium and a high contrast. This is coming to color scheme generation as well, probably in the next stable release. So this is all too many colors to define manually. So what do? You use a tool, Material Web Builder or a Figma tool, for example. This works well. I'm not going to go much into this. I'm just going to show you what you get. If you use the web builder, you can customize your primary and your tertiary, for example. You can also add custom colors. So in this case, we have an error. Maybe we want a warning and success color. And you use the hue chromatone color picker to this, which is the color space that the material uses. And what you get is a bunch of tonal palettes, and these colors are then assigned to various colors in the color scheme. That's how the whole thing works. New thing in this web builder is that you can assign some fonts also from Google Fonts. So you can set a predefined fonts for your headings and another for the body. That's kind of nice and handy. And then you export this to Flutter and you get this. So now you have all the colors for the light scheme, the medium, and the high contrast, and the same for the dark. It's a silly amount of colors, of course, that you get when you export this. And you get also the same things for your custom colors and the helper to make a theme from it. So this is nice, but of course now if you change something, you have to go back and export and put it back into your code again, and that's a little bit tedious. And I'm not going to talk anymore about Team Builder. I'm going to talk tomorrow by Shrey, who is going to talk about Team Builder more, so you can go there and check that out. But if you do this manually, it's too many colors, there are too many intricate relationships between the colors. Maybe some fancy designer could do it, but you don't want to do this anymore. So we have the from seed. We all know that one color scheme from seed. We have been using it. And yeah, that's nice. We have an indigo blue, for example. I'm going to use that as my brand. I started and I use the seed color. But where is my brand color? When we are looking at the colors there, it's not in there anywhere. So what we have learned already before is that you have to pin it. So you can pin my brand to the primary in light and to primary container, typically in dark mode. And now you have the brand colors pinned in there as well in the seed generated. Okay, cool. I mentioned that color scheme from seed changed in Flutter 3.22. The default one, before, if you look at the highlighted red colors, we had something that looked like this. Now in 3.22, they are slightly changed. If I switch back and forth, you can see surface colors, and these are changing. What is new is that primary colors are even more muted than before, and light surface are slightly more tinted, and dark surface are actually darker. And that is nice. The rest of the things, maybe it's not so nice. You need to do something else to get back to the colors. So that's where this fidelity option popped up in the documents, that you can use this to get brighter colors. And that's true, but then the tertiaries are not different, and they are not the same as they used to be either. But this is a nice option, and the content one is another good one that you can use as a seed generation scheme variant. But okay, I have two brand colors. I have my indigo and I have my tertiary asparagus. So what do I do then? It's not doable. I can only have one. I can override there, but then all the other tertiaries, if I put it into the tertiary, are going to be the default that the seed made. I could make it manually and define all those 14 colors, but that's going to be tedious. So then I need something else. Then I need seed color from seeds, where you can have a seed color for every color. That's what you could do with the material team builder, but you can't do it in Flutter with standard code. So you can use this package for that. Then you can add more seed colors in there, and you get all those seeded with your brand colors and pinned there as well. And you can do other things with it, like increase contrast under dark and light mode, and tweak it a little bit. It has another nice, cool features. This is a package that I wrote quite a time ago, where I had just updated it to support all the new features that are available in dynamic scheme and material color utilities. Oh, by the way, MCU, not Marvel Cinematic Universe, material color utilities. So then you have more options in the Flex seed scheme, and the most important part is that you can use multiple seed colors for also the MCU dynamic schemes and the ones that are based on Flex seed scheme's own algorithms, which are kind of nicer. The new thing is also you can do the contrast level thing. So you can use a slider and you can address the contrast of the generated scheme. Typically, you should use 0, 0.5, and 1. Those are the ones recommended, but it goes from -1 to 1, and it's just a double scale. You can test pinning of seed colors and all these kind of things. Okay, so that was the algorithm change, and we got new colors, but even sort of bigger change is also that all the component mappings, the colors in the color schemes are nothing unless you map them to colors in components. And all that changed in Flutter 3.22. So for example, if you look at the navigation bar, it used to be surface color and an elevation of 3, and the surface tint gave it a tinted color. Now it's just much the surface container, and there is no tint. It's just getting the pre-computed container color, surface container color. And we can see that it changed there a little bit, and you can look at the PR if you want to and go ahead and check it out. But talking about PRs and the change, if you look at how many of these changes were made, there were 181 files changed in the Flutter repo to do this change, and over 2,000 lines of code changed, and it gets a small footnotes in the release. So it's quite significant. Well, not full, there is a page about it, but it's not that deep. So yeah, that's a big change. So if you have been doing tests, you will notice that your tests break because you get different results than before. Component defaults. Material people always ask me, where do I get the defaults? What color is used where? Check the material tree guide and the specs sections. It's all there for every component. Another handy trick is just to dig into the code and open up the specific component and scroll to the end of it, and there you have the defaults also in Flutter. It should be the same as the spec. It usually is. Sometimes there is a bug and it's not, but 98% of the time it is, maybe 99 by now.
Right. Now I'm going to talk about carousel. This is not in the stable branch right now. This is a new component by the material design team. Usually, when you need a carousel, you have to go to pub.dev and find a carousel package. But now we have an official material design carousel. It's provided by the material design team. It has a parallax effect. It has a weighted and a item extend property, where you can see some items are a little bit more expanded than some are collapsed. And this is a very cool feature, cool widget. It was requested by one of the community members. One of the community members talked about, you need this widget. Do we create a package, or do we add it in the framework? We decided to add it in the framework. This is currently in progress. We have part 1 of this widget right now. It's available on master if you want to try it out. So the name of this widget is carousel view. So it has 2 very important parameters. item extend, and shrink extend. Item extend is the item that does not shrink. I'll go another one slide. And then you will see that there are some items that are not shrink, and some are less shrink. So here I'm using two values. I'm using 200, I think. Let's go back. Yeah, 330 for the item that is the main item. And then there is a shrink extend. You could have it 0, then it will collapse to the available child size, or you could have a fixed size, and you could create cool effects with this. But like I said, this is a work in progress, so there's another part of this. You can see here in effect. You can see it's on desktop. So, and you could also have a weighted effect with this widget. If you go back to the specs, yeah, you can see that the right item is more collapsed. So the part 2 will add this weighted effect. So I just wanted to give you a sneak preview of this widget so you can see what's coming in the material library. And then we will talk about,
widget state. About widget state, there's not really so much to tell you about it, other than that widget state replaces material state, and there is a lot of these APIs that you use to react to changes in the color or properties, etc. So all these are deprecated, the material states one, except 2 that remain still used. So why was this done? This is because the API was moved from the material library to the widget library, so that it can also be used by Cupertino widgets and other people that wants to build custom widgets without depending on material. So it's a little bit helpful for people who want to do that. And it's quite easy to replace, and there's a Flutter fix for it, so there's not much to say about it. But you are likely to come across them and see them in a lot of properties when you are dealing with teaming and building some custom components. So there is also the Flutter SDK is not yet updated to this. So even if you go to the documents and run examples, etc., on the site, you will see deprecation warnings for it. So it's something that will go away soon enough that we don't have that, but simple enough.
So now I'm going to talk about one of my favorite features that have been available in the material, in the master branch right now. It's called button builders. When you use any material button, you have a style properties, usually button style or a particular style like text button.from or elevated fill button. You can customize this button by providing a custom background color and a foreground color. And then you have a child parameter. In the child parameter, you usually provide text, or you could provide any other widget. And you could also change the height of this button, and you can remove overlay, or you could have like all kinds of customization, right? But now, there's a new parameter called, 2 parameters actually, background builder and foreground builder. These 2 parameters allow you to create buttons that were not possible to create just using buttons. You would have to use stack, you would have to use your own inkwell, your own gesture detector, and then you will create this button that resembles a button. But now, you don't have to do that. You just use any text button, fill button, elevated button, text button, any kind of button, material button. In the style property, you get background builder and foreground builder. And Mike talked about widget state. Here we get access to the button state. Like when the button is hovered, when it's pressed, when it is disabled. So you can use these states with the context, so you can use any kind of widget that needs the context inside these builders. And then you also get the child that returns in the builder. Like for example, here I have a button called I am a button, or I have a text widget called I am a button. You get that in your builder. So, but it's nullable, you don't have to use it. So in next slide, I'm gonna talk about this button that I created. It's a text button, but it has no text in it. And you could use this new property called background builder, and you could have different states. So here I'm using hover state. In the hover state, I'm not returning child. I'm returning a decorated box that returns a GIF. And then, when there is no other state, you return an image. Even though it's a button, it has all the characteristics of a button. You can press on it. You can have on-press callback. You can change the radius, or you can change the minimum size or maximum size of this widget. So what you get is you get a button that is static when you're not pressing on it or hovering on it, in this case. It's just an image. When you hover on it, it switches to that state. It says, okay, I have this decorated box with a GIF, and it starts playing GIF. So you create like a movie app or a shopping app, any kind of app with regular buttons, and you can have really creative freedom to return whatever you want. You're not limited to just text in your button. Here, I'm not even returning a regular widget. I'm returning a custom painter as a foreground. And here you can see the child is just a shrink box, which means there is nothing there. So you don't have to use child, but you have to provide child because it's not a nullable property. We don't want to break the widget to make it nullable for everybody. So now, in this state, I can use no state. I just want to return a background that's just a amber color. And then I return a custom painter that's animating this text. And you have freedom to do whatever you want. And you can still click on this button like a regular button. You can also see a splash effect on this button. It's just a text button, or it could be elevated button. And you can really have a lot of creative freedom with these two builders. Here, I'm using both builders, background and foreground. In the background, you could provide gradient button. You could create buttons for a game, like a really custom fancy buttons that have no corners or shapes. Or you could use SVG. Everybody know like Flutter SVG package. You could return a SVG as a background. So you could have a really fancy design, just use the SVG file as a background. And you don't have to draw it in custom paint. And then in foreground, I'm returning a stack, and it's just a simple stack, just to show the power of foreground and background. And I really encourage you to try this, one of my favorite features. And I'm going to talk about quality improvements. In this section, there will be a bunch of small improvements I want to talk about and highlight some of the contribution from the Flutter community. This contribution is done by one of the Flutter community members from India. And he has added this property called icon alignment. So since the introduction of buttons, when you have icon buttons, you could have an icon on the left when it is in RTL or LTR. Or if it is in RTL, when you use the right-hand language, it's on the right. But with this property, you could choose to override that. So here I'm using start alignment. It is the default value, but I just provided it here so you can see where the icon is aligned. In this case, it's an emoji. And then you could change it to end position. And you could have your icon position at the end, even though the language is still LTR. So you could still choose to change your icon, and you have a lot of freedom there. With RTL, with the right-hand languages, here I'm just emulating the RTL button just to showcase this demo. Here, I have the default position, which is start. In RTL, it would be on the right, but you could override that and put it on the left. So it's a very simple parameter, but you could create different layouts, different buttons, and you have more freedom with this feature, which is amazing. And here, I want to talk about something. You have used ChatGPT. There is a sidebar on the left. You get this sidebar. Whenever you generate a prompt, you get a new entry on the left, right? And you have like a list of entries every single day there. So here, I'm just imagining that kind of layout where you have a row. So imagine a row has a sidebar. And in this sidebar, you want to use menu item button. Menu item button provides shortcuts. It provides you a lot of flexibility to start a menu. So when you use this button inside a row, and it's in a limited space, the ChatGPT could generate like a long text, but it only shows a preview of that text. When we do that in Flutter, we get an overflow. Because menu item button want to overflow because it has a horizontal axis. So this is for the menus that are in the horizontal layout. But in this case, we are using row, and we're restricting the space, emulating that sidebar. Like you could see it on Reddit or ChatGPT, for example. But with this new parameter, you could override that. You could use, you could say item button don't overflow in horizontal direction, overflow in vertical direction. But in this case, I'm also using max line 1 to show that kind of ChatGPT style sidebar. And you could have as much long text as you want. In this case, it just says hello, yada, yada. And it doesn't overflow anymore. In this, so when you use the parameter, you have this menu item button that's able to not overflow, and it knows which direction to flow, and which is in this case is vertical. And if you have multi-line text, here I'm having max 1 line, but you could have multiple line, and it does not overflow. It's a very nice improvement. And then I'm going to talk about chips. just using one chip, but in any chip, you will find these new features. In this case, we have a 3-line text chip. It could be like a suggestion at the bottom of the screen. When you click on it, it does some action. And in this case, I'm just having a text. There's like 3 lines of code, 3 lines of text. And then because of this, because the chip is now higher than the usual size, the leading and trailing think, okay, we should also be using more space because the chip is higher than what it used to be. So here I have a avatar and delete icon, so they take more space. And on the right, you can see there is a layout inspector. So you can see there is a lot of white space around it. This is because it want to take the same size as a chip height. And chip height is because of the 3 lines of text. But there are new parameters called avatar box constraint and delete icon constraint. These parameters allow you to have your own constraint. In this case, I'm using tight for infinite, and you could remove that extra padding around the chip, around the delete icon. And this allows you to have like a better use of space in a layout. So you could have multiple chips aligned at the bottom of the screen, and you don't have unnecessary constraints there. And then this is also one of the community member contribution. Segmented button, by default, only takes the space for each item. So in this case, it takes an icon, text, icon, text, icon, text. So it calculates the space that it should take. It should say, okay, I have 4 buttons. It takes what are the weights of each buttons. It only takes that much space. But you could override this with a new parameter called expanded inset. It allows you to have a navigation bar style segmented button. I'll show you in the next slide. So it can expand into a bigger space. You can have this on your website where you have a top header with a large segmented button. And then you could use this spacing to provide a bigger text, more space. It's much more readable. And you're not limited with the spacing. And it's more accessible and readable on big screen. So this is also a really nice contribution. And this is not really a new feature. It's just something that was requested, and there was a lot of good reviews about this. So I just wanted to highlight that you can do this. With app bar, you could customize it with background color. You could customize the shape of it. Here I just have a list and an app bar. And you could also provide custom shape to this with the shape parameter. But this is not just rectangular border. It's not rounded rectangular border. This is an extended of outline border. This allows you to have a shape that looks nothing like a rectangular rounded border, right? You can see it's a wavy corner, wavy shape. It's actually inspired by one of the articles from the community members. And I just wanted to highlight that you could have a shape that's not a rounded rectangular. You could extend outline border, which is the parent of rounded rectangular border, and you could draw your own path. You could draw your own shapes. Here is drawing a line, quadratic Bezier, and it's returning that path. So I would encourage you to try this sample using this link at the bottom, and you will be able to try it and create app bar with a very minimal customization. And you could have a very fancy looking, this is just a very simple example. You could have very fancy looking app bar that's very easy to create with one parameter.
All right. Thank you, Taha. A lot of new and exciting small fixes. And next, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to cram 1.5 2-hour workshop into maybe 7-10 minutes. So this is something of my favorite topics with teaming is adaptive teaming, to make it platform adaptive and have it look different on different platforms. And this is something you can do. And you have been able to do it forever, but few people use it. And Flutter actually does this internally already to some extent for it, but you can go nuts with it and do something different. So we are going to take a look at that. And we are also going to make a slight platform adaptive color scheme. Let's say we have a bunch of colors. We have 9 of them. I need to cram all these into my color scheme because these are designer colors. It's avocado deli. They got to have their avocado colors in the color scheme. In this case, I just picked some pictures by random and picked some colors from it. But, you know, it looks kind of neat. So this must be in the design. We're also going to have, so then that's that. First we just make them as static colors, of course. So we have them defined. Okay, fine, easy, good. Those we will use. We also have semantic colors, color with meaning. they will have like order received, preparing, delivery, delivered, and they have some colors for that. This we are going to tune and harmonize to the color scheme a little bit so that they fit better with our scheme. And we need those values as well, so let's just grab that. And I said we're going to do adaptive team. So we will do an adaptive team response that is different if it's not Android or if it's on web. So even on Android using web would get the adaptive response. We just want to have the adaptive response of everything else than Android. And we are going to modify the border radius and some shapes on it, and a few more things. So that's pretty straightforward and simple. First thing to do, though, is always to get your color scheme together. So what I'm going to do here, I picked 3 colors, the avocado, avocado ripe, and avocado core as my seeding colors. And I'm using 3 seed colors here, so I have to use, you know, that package that somebody wrote. So, all right. And I'm also going to use a special tone adaptation and so that we get another algorithm than the standard one, how to do it. And when we are on non-Android, we are going to do monochrome surfaces, so we don't have any color tint in it then. Because color tint on anything else than Android looks like, what's all these tinted colors? Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you do, but. And another thing you need to do then is to pin all these colors that we had, the color values, to the overrides. This is something that can be a little bit tricky to figure out sometimes what you need to do and where they fit, but I'll show you a little trick. So when you do this on non-Android platforms, we get a color scheme that looks like this. It's pretty bright. It's using all the colors that I have defined in the 9 different colors are also in the seed-generated color scheme. So that's already pretty cool. And on Android, there is a slight difference in that the surfaces are very slightly color tinted. Not a lot, because I don't like it a lot, but they can be a little bit so that it looks Androidy and materially on material platform, but they're more subtle in it. A way to do this, to figure out where you can put your colors, is to not pin any colors first, just generate it with whatever seeding generating scheme you're using and variant for it. And then you can look at your colors palettes and see where they would fit a little bit in this. And that's basically what I did before I did the mapping there at the bottom where I put the different colors. And then you end up with a color scheme that, yeah, okay, now we got a good light and dark color scheme, and all our 9 different colors in our palette that we wanted are actually represented in it, and we can use them. So that's cool. Then we're going to do something very easy. We're going to have the standard default shapes and designs on Android, and on all other platforms, we're going to do something different. Buttons are going to be more, yeah, let's call them iOS-like or human interface guide style buttons or all the other things. And we do the same for the toggle buttons and segmented buttons and the chips and the switches. And we're going to do some other secret sauce there as well. I'll look at that shortly. This is, by the way, available, this demo here available in a repo, so you can go and look at all the details about how this this code is done and getting an adaptive team. So come back to that. Basic setup. I have only 3 teaming parameters. Use material 3 or not, and please don't use material 2 anymore, but it's available for this demo. And we are going to have a custom font in there, so we're going to zoom that font or not, and then what theme mode we are using. The rest is just a function to return the theme based on the brightness and these settings in light and dark mode and for the theme mode. And we had a data class in there as well. Then I'm going to check the brightness, and we grab the scheme based on the brightness, and we are going to do a custom visual density. Instead of standard and compact on desktop, we are doing standard and comfortable. This is a small change that I often like to do because I think comfortable is nicer on desktop if you have a desktop that is a laptop with a touch interface, then that makes it a little bit bigger. All right, other than that, we had an important feature here as well when we start building the fun team data, because building team data is fun. There's so few parameters. And one of them is Cupertino team data, apply team to all. This will make sure that all our color scheme color that we defined gets applied to all the Cupertino widgets in a sensible way so that they get themed as well. This is quite a new thing actually in the material team data. Then we're going to use our color scheme and our visual density. And one thing I like to do is also, you know, Android has beautiful splash effect. When you click on something, it expands for it, you hold it, it does it slower and all these kind of cool. But yeah, if it's not Android, it doesn't really belong, does it? So let's take it away. When we have that theme response, we do an instant splash filter, and that's something crazy like that. You don't want to look at it. But it's just a copy of the existing splash factory with all time sets to 0 so that it's instant. There is also a default built one in one that you could use alternative called No Splash Splash Factory. That one has a little bit of animation into it, but it's not instant. I wanted to show how it looks when you do it instantly. All right, then sadly, there is still legacy color properties in team data. Unless you want to have some issues when if somebody accidentally uses those colors, I suggest assigning colors from your color scheme to those colors still. They are supposed to be deprecated. They started this 2-3 years ago. They're still there. So, but it's there. It's not bad if you're doing it in material 3 because they're hardly used there or anywhere. App bar, okay. App bar contains one secret sauce ingredient, and that is that when you do the scroll under elevation, normally it doesn't animate because there is a sort of optimization in the material widget that removes this animation if you haven't assigned a shape. So if you assign a shape to it, even if it's the same shape that it had and not a custom like Taha talked about, you're getting the transition animation when it changes the shape, so it's not instant. Another thing that I often see when people want to do text styles for component is they start thinking about where do I put this into the text theme to get it. Don't put it in the text theme, put it in the component theme. Make a fancy font for your text style. Here we have the lobster that you see there, and do that, and don't mess it into the text theme. Do a separate if you want to have something extra for the up bar or wherever. All right, then just buttons, different shape depending on the theme response. Same thing with the toggle and segmented buttons. And you can see you have the instant flashes and the splashes on Android, whereas we don't have that on the Android side when we're doing that. Also, the chips we're making a little bit smaller, reversing the look of them. And we have a fancy switch theme that actually makes the default switch look like sort of an iOS switch. You can also use the adaptive one, and that one will get used on iOS and Mac OS. But if you're doing it on Windows, you will actually get the material one that looks almost like iOS and not like Indra. So that's kind of a cool thing. A little secret sauce there. If you want to make a material switch that has a fixed thumb size, put an icon on it and make it transparent, and it stays the same size. Okay, navigation bar is pretty nice as it is, not much to do about it. I just usually like to give it another color and show what that does, etc., to have some more contrast on it. And also here we can see a little bit with the widget state property and all how that works. That's very simple thing to do. But for not the teaming related thing, but please, can we just all agree that we don't make system navigation bars on Android that don't follow the theme and the color of the navigation bar anymore? So because iOS has always done this, and it looks so much nicer when it does that. It's a little thing that you have to do, and it's done. So that you can dig into. Input decoration, everybody loves that one. To style that is so fantastic. We want to have a nice looking input decoration that's a little bit customized, and you also need to reuse that on drop-down menu. So yeah, it's going to be something like that, and it's always horrible. But you know, here you have an example. You can dig into it and see what you can do with it and use it as a starting point for your own ideas. Dialogues, not customizing those so much. If you want to do really adaptive fires, use the adaptive versions, of course, but here we're just styling them to make them a little bit more personal. Text themes. Text themes are simple in principle, but they can be challenging because if you don't do it right, you don't get the weights in there. So you have to put the weights into the style on the Google fonts and then use them on the text theme. You can't use a text theme without the weight and expect it to show up in the text theme if you do that. Also, there is a Google fonts that gives you an entire text theme. That one has a bug, so it only gives you a fixed color. So there I have a small fix for it. Next comes a quite complicated topic, the theme extension. We're going to pop in our theme extension with the customized colors and 2 customized fonts. And I'm going to have to go very quickly to this, but you can watch a YouTube video from Craig about this, where you get the standard run-through that you have to define the props, the copy with the lerp, and you can add some extra functions, a constructor to make a light and dark version of the colors that we had, and to make that, and a fancy thing to change the font size and do something called blend harmonization. All right, and to harmonize colors is something where you adjust the color of everything towards your scheme a little bit. And here you can see a result of why you do color extensions, because when you do that, you get when you do the transition of the theme. The top row there is the fixed colors, they won't animate. The bottom colors actually animate and transition because you use them as a theme extension, and they are also slightly changed in color. This is a nice, cool effect, and you can do the same with textiles. When you have defined a textile as a theme extension and you change its size in that theme, you get something like this, that when you click and change it, everywhere you use that font, it will animate this change. And that is kind of cool. You don't have to do, I'm not doing anything else than this, than toggling true and false, and the app will animate everywhere it's used, that font. All right, that's all we can do with adaptive themes, and you can go really crazy and wild about it, and we are getting tight. Theming rocks, animations.
I'm going to go quick. I have links at the bottom, so you can visit these links. There is something called suggested animation easing and durations. These are really cool animation curves and duration that you could use in combination. So Material Team suggests these combinations. You could see it says emphasize decelerate, use it for enter the screen. So you could see the duration, you could see the animation effect. You can apply this into your own custom widgets or customize the existing widget with the field of this suggested animations. So what you get is, if we look at the emphasize one, you can see the curve. I created this visualization, so hopefully it plays. Yeah, so here I have this dropping ball animation. So you can see there is a curve on the left. It's a visualization. You can see the curve goes really fast and it's much more emphasized than the legacy curves we used to have, or the standard curve. It's much more linear, even though it's a curve, it's not as pronounced as the emphasized one. There is a lot of emphasis on that emphasized curve. So you can see on the left, it's the emphasized decelerate. On the right is the standard accelerate, decelerate. And you get this really emphasized animation curve. And when you use this, when you compare this, you can see that there's a very slight change, but it creates a really cool visual effect. And then they also introduced suggested durations you could use for different type of widgets. Like certain widgets have to be short, certain widgets can be long. And in general, Material 3 animations are a little bit longer than Material 2. They created really expressive, beautiful designs. And here I customized expansion tile animation using one of the suggested curve. It's short duration. And when you apply this, it expands with that duration. When you use long, it takes longer to collapse. So you could use this, just a very simple example. You could use this suggested animation curves and duration to create really expressive designs that are really beautiful in nature. And I'm going to go fast. You can see at the bottom, there will be some links. And then you also use it for something that's not even on the screen, like bottom sheet, for example. It appears with using that duration and animation curve. So there is something called animation style property in some of the widgets. You could use these animation curves and duration to customize some of the widget. So here I'm customizing pop-up menu button. You can see on the left, it's using the default standard, I think. And on the right, it will use emphasize. It's much more quick. It's on the nose. It's subtle, and it's more beautiful. And what we have learned so far.
Yeah, thank you all. This was really intense. So the updated color scheme is complex, but we can own it. It's possible. And the carousel widget is arriving. It's really lovely, but it's not ready quite yet. And do migrate to widget state. And button builders, yeah, when they cool, I love them.
Yeah, my favorite too. And we have a lot of component improvements, quality improvements. I encourage you to check out new releases and go into the details. Just don't look at the footnote, read the whole thing, and you will find a lot of surprises there. And then material theming is very powerful. It's much more powerful than it has ever been. You could customize everything, especially using flex color scheme. And then animations are fun. They are really fun if you want to use them correctly. Don't you overuse them, but the suggested animation curves, you can't really go wrong with them.
And that was really everything material all at once. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.